Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, October 1st, 2018. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. It is 7:40. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, yeah, after the roll. Clerk Cyprian, I ask you to call the roll.
Palomsky,
Here.
Graham,
Here.
Paluto,
Here.
York,
Here.
Levin,
Here.
Park,
Here.
Conquest,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
Mulliner,
Here.
Brennan,
Here.
Sabatino, absent, Deuter,
Here.
Dunn,
Here.
Leader,
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 ayes.
13 present.
13 present, 1 absent. Noted for the record that Alderman Brennan is joining us via electronic means. On to agenda item 3. Receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who has any written communications they wish to submit for distribution at a later time? Anybody in the audience with any written communications, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll go on to public forum. Agenda item 4. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council and specifically the remarks to the chair on any item they so choose. Once you've been recognized, we ask that you make your way over to the microphone on my right, your left. We are recording this, so we ask that you announce your name. Your address is optional. Out of respect for work that we have to get done here this evening, and out of respect for others who may want to talk, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. I will keep time, and if you go over, I will give you a gentle reminder to wrap up. Clerk Spencer, at this time, Clerk Cyprian, we'll try it again. It'll be the last one, I promise. Clerk Cyprian, at this time, is there anybody signed up for public forum?
Yes, Mayor, we have several. First one is Daniel Cusack.
Hello, my name is Daniel Cusack. My wife Nancy and I have lived at 0 South 579 Kirk since 1987. I'm here to speak to you tonight about my concerns about the sub-area plans. But before I do that, I'd like to express my disappointment with how the whole process went with the sub-area plans. We attended the request for input meeting back in June of 2017, along with a handful of other residents from Yorkfield. I understand only a few of us were invited to come to that meeting. During that meeting, our input had to do with traffic. One thing we particularly wanted was a stoplight at Butterfield and Euclid Streets. 2, we were concerned about the future of the neighborhood and especially the property values that have been declining. And 3, hospital issues, particularly traffic, inadequate signage, and security issues. Our input was not considered. None of our neighborhood concerns are reflected in the sub-area plan. And the plan calls for many significant changes in our area, but it was not adequately publicized or otherwise made known to the affected residents. Few of the area residents even know that what the plan is or how they will be affected by it. Your process, while it might meet the letter of the law, does little to facilitate participation or encourage residents to provide adequate transparency. The plan, while it is vague and nonspecific, calls for a huge increase in multifamily housing, possibly hundreds of units, but there's no mention of any professional studies as to how such a large increase in residents is going to impact schools, traffic, flooding, infrastructure. Another problem with the plan is the lack of an overall master plan with regards to the goals, particularly the replacement of the existing single-family homes. The plan implies a piecemeal approach to implementation, allowing incompatible uses in existing residential areas. A purpose of the Elmhurst zoning ordinance is, I quote, to protect residential, business, commercial, and industrial areas alike from harmful encroachment by incompatible uses. The hospital development has already had a significant negative impact on our properties and living conditions. This plan of more overdevelopment with incompatible uses will harm the individual taxpayer homeowners even more. I would ask, was any consideration even given to how a plan, even the creation of a plan like this, puts a black mark on all of our homes regarding any future marketability? Thank you.
Ben Silver?
Good evening. My name is Ben Silver, and I am a community lawyer with Citizen Advocacy Center at 182 North York Street. My comment concerns item 6.14 on tonight's agenda, which is a report from the Development Planning and Zoning Committee recommending approval of a right-of-way license agreement to allow developers at 105 South Cottage Hill to encroach on a public right-of-way. The report is short and to the point. The encroachment would occur only underground and extend no more than 2.5 feet. However, the record before the DPZ included a letter from the developer pledging a $20,000 contribution to the Public Arts Commission. This raises some concerns. Donations to public funds are of course welcome, and it is always great to see developers making a public investment in the community. However, it is not clear from the limited report whether this pledged contribution had any effect on the DPZ's decision to recommend the agreement. It would be highly inappropriate for a donation to influence such a recommendation, as there is nothing in the city's ordinances to suggest such a contribution should do so. This would mean Elmhurst laws and decisions could potentially be overridden by large contributions to public funds. While contribution to a public fund may be an appropriate remedy when written into law, that is not the case with this type of situation in Elmhurst. I hope that the council will pull this item from the consent agenda, discuss whether or not this license agreement will be approved without the donation, and do everything in its power to discourage even a perception that such a donation might influence a zoning decision in the future. Thank you.
Rob Wisco?
Good evening. Hi, my name's Rob Wisco. I live at 297 North Maple. I'd like to talk to you tonight a little bit about a petition that I put together for residential beekeeping that I believe was discussed in committee last week, but unfortunately I was unable to attend that. Several years ago, I happened to read an article on beekeeping. That's how my interest started. It's a hobby that dates back thousands of years and to the beginning of civilization. It's also a highly educational thing, hence why Elmhurst has in its laws the ability and for the high school and the college to have hives. Few other insects can be observed as closely, and at the end of it, you get honey, so who doesn't love that? But as I fed my interest by reading articles and talking with coworkers who keep bees, I learned about the great benefits that the hives provide to the community as well. Honeybees are one of nature's best pollinators. They will forage for up to 2 miles, meaning a single hive can help pollinate an entire neighborhood's worth of flowers, garden crops, whatever you wish. Unfortunately, the little workers are in great danger. Due to a variety of factors, they are plagued with colony collapse disorder, which generally kills over 1/3 of colonies every year. By replacing those hives, even on residential plots, we can help fight this. And over the last couple decades, they have actually seen that efforts such as this have helped to stabilize the honeybee population. So I'm hoping that you will all take into consideration and allow individual residents to do our part to help support this insect that contributes over $20 billion to our agricultural production. Thank you.
Edgar Pal?
Good evening. My name is Edgar Pal. I'd like to thank and show appreciation for the comments that Mr. Silver made. I'd like to echo those as well for agenda item 6.14, which is a report from the Development Planning and Zoning Committee for 105 Cottage Hill, the right-of-way license agreement. In that report, the committee approved a request from the property owner to allow footings to encroach into the public right-of-way. This appears to be a fairly standard request, a straightforward request. The council seems to consider these proposals all the time. However, I am concerned about a letter that was initially posted on the committee's agenda packet for last week's meeting. Prior to the meeting on August 31st, the developer's attorney wrote a letter to the city which formally requested approval for this encroachment into the right-of-way. However, the letter also stated in the same document that the developer, and I quote, would like to make a contribution in the amount of $20,000 to the newly established Public Arts Commission, end quote. So I'm just wondering, why would this be necessary? On the one hand, we do recognize that right-of-way encroachments may be necessary, and this may be a standard request that you all consider. And on the other hand, we do have a Public Arts Commission that is well deserving of our community's support. In fact, personally, I would be more than happy to donate or contribute to public arts in town, as I believe it's a key part of our cultural experience here. However, by definition, donations are gifts. They are given for altruistic purposes with no expectation of direct benefit, and this does not feel like a gift. Why would the developer feel that it is necessary to mention the donation in the same letter as a request for approval to encroach upon public property? It seems unclear from the committee report or the agenda packet whether the committee would have taken this donation into consideration when approving the request. If the city usually requests some sort of payment for this type of arrangement, then the compensation should be written legislatively into the committee report rather than being treated as a separate donation to a city commission. Therefore, I ask the city council to review the report, pull it off the consent agenda without taking the proposed donation into consideration, and ensure that in the future, donations to the city are clearly separated from the city council's legislative and policy-making activities. Thank you.
Michael Cromery?
The Chicago Blackhawks special hockey team will be hosting their first game of the season on Saturday, October 13th at Center Ice of DuPage in Glen Ellen. The Chicago Blackhawks special hockey team members range in age from 5 to 55 and include both male and female athletes. The team is comprised of players that have autism, Down syndrome, or other intellectual disabilities. The team promotes sportsmanship, team spirit, and increased confidence, all while playing hockey. The program has been in place for 18 years. We have over 100 players that practice at 3 ice rinks in the Chicagoland area: Glen Ellen, Orland Park, and the MB Financial Ice Arena in Chicago, the same practice facility used by the NHL Blackhawks. And we are actually a program that is through the Chicago Blackhawks charities. The event on Saturday, October 13th, from 1 to 4:30 p.m. will include 2 games with the Chicago Police and Fire Departments versus the Chicago Blackhawks special hockey team. Fundraising activities include gift basket raffles, 50-50 split the pot, and chuck a puck, where you get to toss a hockey puck out onto center ice to win money. All proceeds from the event will benefit the Chicago Blackhawks special hockey team trip to the inaugural NHL Special Hockey Tournament on November 16, 18 at the UPMC, which is a medical center, Lemieux Sports Complex in Pittsburgh, PA. To learn more, please go to the Chicago Blackhawks Special Hockey website. It's Chicago Special Hockey, all one word, chicagospecialhockey.com. Again, Chicago Police and Fire Department versus the Chicago Blackhawks Special Hockey Team, Saturday, October 13th at Center Ice of DuPage in Glen Ellen. Hope to see you there. Your time and support is sincerely appreciated.
Okay, that's it for public forum for those who signed up. Is there anybody in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign in on our sign-in sheet that still wants to address the council at this time? If so, please raise your hand so I can get a count. Anybody who did not sign up but still wants to address council? Seeing none, I'll move on to announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. On October 16th, the City of Elmhurst Commission on Youth will host Tim Ryan to speak at Bryan Middle School, the program From Dope to Hope, talking about drug addiction and recovery. All are welcome.
Okay, anyone else? Clerk Cyprian?
Elmhurst City Hall is an early voting site for the November 6, 2018 general election for all registered voters of DuPage County. Early voting will take place beginning Monday, October 22nd, 2018 through Saturday, November 3rd, 2018, between the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday in the council chambers at City Hall, 209 North York Street. For information on additional early voting locations, contact the DuPage Election Commission at 630-407-5600 or visit their website at dupageco.org/elections.
Any other announcements? Alderman Mulliner.
Just a reminder that on October 11th, that's a Thursday night, the American Legion will have their last cool cars under the Stars and Stripes from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, so anybody who can join us, that'd be great.
Okay, any other announcements? Seeing none, I'll go on to the consent agenda. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to have removed or for comment or to vote no? I'm not an alderman, but I was one. And I am going to pull item 6.17. It's an ordinance, and there's problems with the way it was written versus the way it lines up with the report that was approved previously. There's no time issue with it, so we're pulling back 6.17. It's an ordinance, just to have it rewritten so it better aligns the way it should. Any other, Alderman Honquist?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull 6.12 back to committee, please.
6.12, pull back to committee. Okay, it's a courtesy we allow our chairman to make, assuming committee's okay with it. All right, Alderman Bram.
Yes, I'd like to pull 6.14 and 6.20.
6.14 and 6.20. Okay. Anyone else? All right, let's see if I got it all. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6.12, 6.14, 6.17, and 6.20. Motion to approve consent agenda minus those items listed. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Levin. Clerk Spencer.
Should never say never.
Sorry, I had something caught in my throat.
Palomsky,
Clerk Cyprian.
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Toledo,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Levin,
Aye.
Park, Conquest,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan,
Aye.
Sabatino, absent, Deuter,
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
Leader,
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda minus items 6.12, 6.14, 6.17, and 6.20 is approved. On to the first item we pulled, 6.12. That's going back to committee. There you go. Oh, just falling apart at the seams here. 6.14, this is a report out of DP&Z. Clerk Cyprian, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development Planning and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the ROW license agreement as requested. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed, Michael Honquist, Chairman, Noel Toledo, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve. The report and recommendation is read. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toledo. Alderman Honquist, your report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will defer to the alderman that pulled it for questions or comments.
Okay. Alderman Brand, I believe you're the one that requested this be removed from the consent agenda. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to talk about this recommendation in two pieces, one of which, the recommendation as a whole of this being an encroachment. One of the residents, Mr. Pell, has already talked about, we deal with this on a regular basis, it seems like, or frequently. Not so much defined as an encroachment, but more defined as right-of-way vacations. I look at this request as a right-of-way vacation. Right-of-way vacations have come in all shapes and sizes. The Public Works Committee has debated it on many occasions. And it's tough, and it should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes the right-of-way vacation is utilized by the purchaser to split a property or have another buildable lot. Sometimes it's just because they've been utilizing it and they don't see a need for the city to have it and they would like to add to their current lot. Sometimes it's because they want to build something. I believe that this recommendation being mentioned and stated as an encroachment is exactly that, the last one. That this is not really an encroachment. This is a permanent use of city property, public property, which is the Elmhurst residents' property. This isn't something that's temporary. This isn't even utilizing airspace. This is utilizing the property, public property in itself to allow for this petitioner to build a bigger development on that property. It says even in the letter by the petitioner or the petitioner's attorney that without this, they could still build the property, but it would be significant, well, I don't know if they made mention of significant, but additional cost. So my feeling, and this is how I felt all along when it talks about any private entity utilizing a right-of-way, is that there should be some fee. Our policy itself, when we talk about right-of-way vacations, talks about 50% of EAV as a starting point. This wasn't treated that way. This didn't come through the usual Public Works Committee discussion. It went through DP&Z. And I assume the rationale is because this is being requested as an encroachment versus a right-of-way vacation. I don't see a difference. I believe it is a right-of-way vacation. Potentially, we could say right-of-way vacation with a city easement. But this petitioner is utilizing it permanently and utilizing it to have a larger development. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there should be a price to pay taking a city asset. The other piece I want to mention is also Mr. Pell and the CAC attorney has mentioned in regards to a statement made in one of the letters that the petitioner's attorney submitted. I'm not saying that there was any ill intent by the mention of doing a donation, but there is no way in my mind that this petition, this request should have been clouded by a statement in the petitioner's letter to utilize an encroachment of the city's right-of-way to also mention about a donation to a newly formed commission. Again, I'm not saying there was any ill intent. I'm sure it was exactly what was stated, and that being that they want to be part of the community. But you do it after that consideration should be made after the fact if this petitioner's request would have been granted. You can't take this back. The cat is out of the bag. It muddies the water. Whatever phrase you want to say, there is the petitioner's request along with a stated donation. I just feel awkward of moving forward with this for, one, the basis of the petition itself, because I believe it's a right-of-way, but it just makes it even that much worse in my perspective that there was a statement of a donation before anything was granted. Again, it muddies the water, perception becomes reality. This is a large encroachment, up to 2.5 feet for probably over a couple hundred feet. And right now we see what may happen is a donation to a commission.
Any additional comments? Alderman Honquist.
Yeah, I'd like to address both sections of this by doing a quick recap of what we're actually talking about here. So we have a developer that's coming into town that wants to develop a parcel that has been vacant for roughly 20 years. It's a good-sized project. We reviewed it, city staff reviewed it. Everyone thinks it's an excellent project. In order for them to do the project in the most efficient manner, they asked for a right-of-way, which is the row license. By doing so, and I'd like to, because I already measured tonight, have everyone understand that what they're asking for is literally less than what's in front of you on the dais in width and about the same amount of height, about 4 feet down. It would go right underneath the sidewalk. So it's not visible. It allows the developer to do the project and to do it less expensively. The reason that that we were in approval of this is roughly a $10 million project, and they were willing to step up and pay for the sidewalk and all of the landscaping around the property. So again, the right-of-way they're asking for is literally a small area and is underground, and it will be either sidewalk, pavers, or landscaping around it. Second, the developer is using mostly or many Elmhurst contractors. There's small retail shops going in, so there will be some retail that goes with this. And they also stepped up on the other element that was not pulled, which is the SSA agreement, and are willing to pay 50% of the fees, legal fees, to have that removed, which is something that many on this dais in the past, when it's come to development, has asked for, is that developers step up and take a financial interest in having these particular requests litigated. In this case, this one did, and we think it's a good precedent moving forward. Finally, I wanted to say that, what did I want to say? Oh, I covered most of those points anyway. So finally, I just wanted to ask for everyone's support in this project going forward. And then finally, I wanted to address the $20,000 donation. I will ask the city attorney, as I did in committee in a moment, how that should be processed, because we discussed it. But again, this is something where the developer came forward and offered this as not necessarily a particular payment for that strip of property that we're talking about, but to give us some recognition that the city's doing something like this, and this was something the city offered up would be a good way to help get this commission going forward. But I would like to get the commission funded to move forward. So I would like to ask, Mr. Mayor, if I can, the city attorney, the same question I asked him in committee, which is there any legal or ethical issue that he would see in us taking this donation?
Okay, so I do want to hear from the city attorney, and I wasn't present at your meeting, but it sounds like he was. So this issue's been brought up, Mr. Storino, that we have someone before us who's asking for an encroachment in a public right-of-way. And you just heard from, I'm going to say, the committee, at least a summary of what the committee said, for all the reasons they're supporting it. In addition, the applicant put in a letter that they would want to contribute $20,000 to an art commission. Can you opine on, can you add to any part of the conversation that was had in committee, if you want to, and opine on how do we handle something like this? You know, is there any legal issues? You know, I think that any number of our commissions would like to have a donation. I don't want to, stop that, but
Yes,
you could jump in here.
I indicated to the committee that I did not see any legal impairment. The issue is one of consideration. I mean, the city has, this is our right-of-way. If we chose, as Alderman Bram said, to vacate it in some fashion, we'd be looking for compensation. And this is part, the city can look at this as part of the consideration for the forbearance of their right-of-way. So that was what I was asked, and whether I thought that that forbearance was appropriate. I think it's consideration. Whether somebody thinks it's adequate consideration or not is something that can be discussed, but as Alderman Bram was saying, but for me, it's not unlike any other consideration when the city is forbearing something or giving up some of its land, even in a license agreement.
Alderman Levin.
Thank you, Mayor. I will respectfully disagree a bit with the city attorney. I think it may have been ill-advised to put in the suggestion of the gift because it does look inappropriate. I think, and until the city attorney spoke, my feeling was we're looking at the approval of a request for a right-of-way, which is really completely independent of the gift, because if it is a gift, it's not consideration, it's not payment for us giving or not giving as a city this right-of-way. So I have received some emails from residents who apparently are paying attention to social media, which I don't, and asking about this question. And my answer, which I say to them publicly and will respond privately, is the indication of a gift is if someone wants to give it, they may. And if we pass this and they decide they don't want to give the gift, shame on them, but there's no legal obligation to do it. It's not consideration for this request. I feel that I had some concerns, as did Alderman Bram, that maybe there should be compensation, but it is a project, as Chairman Honquist mentioned, that it's bringing development downtown. It's a simple request, so I think we should look at it. And it's, by the way, the gift is not, or the compensation is not part of the report, and I don't assume it'll be part of the ordinance. So that's why I respectfully say it's not consideration, it's not payment. So if I were to vote for this, my vote is to support the idea of granting the right-of-way for a project, and it's on the conscience of the applicant if they want to make the gift or not.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions. One, we've talked about right-of-way vacations. My understanding is that this is not a vacation, that we are not changing the ownership of this land. This will continue to be, the right-of-way will continue to be owned by the city, and there will be something underground that won't affect the city's use of the right-of-way. Is that accurate? Can I?
Alderman Honquist.
Yes, that is correct.
If the donation is to be viewed as compensation, should it be reflected in this report if that was any of the intent? Is it, and just to back up, we certainly have had right-of-way where there's property that used to be owned by the city that is no longer. And we do talk about compensation in those cases. And one of the examples that we talked about recently had to do with asking the person who was going to be receiving the city-owned land to do a stormwater, where they did a demonstration rain garden. So certainly when it comes to right-of-way vacations, we have asked for specific things, and I do believe that's usually documented in the report. So I think one more thing just on the Public Arts Commission, we do have a downtown plan that talks about makes recommendations that public art is a good amenity for downtown. We should be trying to find ways to get more of it. That same downtown plan talks about, I don't know if they talk about other cities or I think the language that they use is our city, Elmhurst, could consider leveraging new development in ways to support public art. So I think in my mind, the city manager was moving to support a couple of recommendations in the downtown plan. That's why I support this concept, and my question, I guess, is just, I want to make sure it's documented in the most appropriate way possible. Certainly want it to all be very clear what we're doing and very transparent. So my question really is just then, should it be documented differently?
Okay. I have a comment or two, but I want to hear more from the committee. Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One direct response to Alderman Deuter's comment, one of the things that we did request in the approval of the license agreement was that the license agreement, the fact that we are granting the right-of-way for the part of the property to go underneath our right-of-way will be recorded on the plat of survey. So if there is ever anything down the road, that's recorded and known. But to your point, it is still our property. We're allowing them to put some of their building onto our property, but that will be recorded in official records for future reference. And then the second thing I wanted to address is just a little bit about some of the conversation going on with this idea of the gift. What I want everyone to be aware of is that the committee discussion did not entail anything in regards to the donation to the Public Arts Commission until after we had evaluated this case on the merits of the case itself and whether we thought it was an appropriate license agreement to go into. We did, per Alderman Honquist and City Attorney Serino's comments, we did talk about the letter about the gift to the Arts Commission after we had approved as a committee and agreed as a committee to move this forward to the council. And we spoke about it because of exactly the conversation that we're having here. We talked about it in the context of the optics of, is this going to look bad or potentially be misinterpreted from the public's perspective or potentially from folks on the city council when we bring this up as a report. And that was why City Attorney Serino gave us the answer that he gave and that he shared with you tonight. In fact, I, at one point, was considering putting it into the report, and we decided against it after consulting with city staff, just because it seemed to bring this up, but now I'm second guessing myself. I'm thinking maybe we should have put it in there, that we talked about it, so that it didn't seem and be misinterpreted in the way. But I think really in the end, it would have been probably a conversation that we needed to have here in the public so that everyone was aware that we did think about it, that we made our decision before consideration of that part of the conversation. And I just wanted to put that out there so that everyone was aware of the intent of the committee and the discussion that we did have and why we had it. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to jump in because that was, I wanted to hear from the committee before I heard that. As I said, I wasn't at the committee, and I think if anything untoward was trying to be had here or was afoot, you wouldn't put it in writing and send it to the city manager. Okay, so I think I take the gift altruistically. That's the way I'm taking it. And what I heard from the commission, which to me, Alderman Toledo, I think the reason why I think the ultimate decision not to put it in the report made sense. And the reason why I say that is I'm hearing from you, and I'm sure if it's up to your other committee members if they want to back you up, but I'm taking you at your word that, and the reason I'm jumping in, I'm not on one side of this report or the other. I'm just trying to set the facts straight. What I heard from you, which is reflected in this report, is that the $20,000 gift that somebody wants to make to a commission of ours was not part of the discussion as it related to whether or not this committee was going to grant this right-of-way. That's what I'm hearing from you. I would leave it up to your other committee members to chime in on that statement. So I'm going to go back to, so the way I look at it is we've got a committee report for a public right-of-way from a committee, and if I am to interpret what what Chairman Honquist said was, hey, they want to put in a big giant building that's going to pay a lot of taxes in a place that hasn't had anything in 20 years. That's a pretty good thing for us. So they want, buried well below the sidewalk, they want to fan their building out and put in a bigger whatever footing so they can build this $10 million building. And we're noting the encroachment. I don't see how it harm, well, we're noting the encroachment. But I will go back to the city attorney as it relates to what he had stated earlier. It's a little different. You said it can be considered for consideration, but I just heard from the committee member that that was not part of their consideration. Is there anything that is, that prohibits the city taking a donation or a gift for a commission, independent of consideration? Because I just heard that wasn't part of the, at least one person on the committee's thought process.
I think you can look at this one of two ways. I understand what Alderman Levin has said. I didn't, I mean, frankly, I looked at this as something that was adequate consideration for a forbearance by the city. The city was giving up something and in return getting something. And to me, that was what consideration is when you give up either a right-of-way or you give up a license agreement or you give up something that sits underneath your right-of-way. I completely understand if the committee was looking at this as a, quote, gift, and that they wouldn't, if they, as Alderman Levin said, if you never get it, you just never get it. And there's no obligation to give it if you look at it as a gift. Frankly, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as a part of the consideration of what was being done, which I think is totally appropriate. So it's up to the council. If you want to look at it as a gift, you understand that that as Alderman Levin said, it may come and it may not come. And if otherwise, you put it in the agreement, you put it in the report, and you say it's consideration, and you expect to receive it. And I don't think it's inappropriate. It's rather than saying he's going to pay $20,000 for a license, he's saying I'm going to make a donation. It's
Well,
still consideration.
I understand what you're saying, but there's nothing that prohibits us as a city, because we're the one who's going to be taking it and shepherding it.
There's nothing that I can see that.
So if someone, let's just separate the two. If someone came to us and said they wanted to give us a gift of $20,000, they could do that.
Yes.
For whatever commission they wanted.
Yes.
There's nothing illegal about that.
It's done frequently.
That's fine, okay. And whether or not it's considered consideration for this vacation, this
License.
encroachment license,
License.
is a separate conversation. So it can be considered part of it, part of consideration, which is the way you interpreted, it sounds like the way you interpreted when the question was asked.
I did.
Or it can be a gift. It can be either or. Either one is legal.
Yes.
That's what I want to get straight more than anything, because I think the committee's, well, I think we have, those are the facts I was looking for. I'll leave it again to the committee to further discuss or provide input on their report. Alderman Mulliner.
When I reviewed this report, it was not my intent at all to worry about the $20,000. I took that as a separate and completely separate component, similar to what Alderman Levin is saying. If it shows up, it shows up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. My consideration was this an appropriate building? And was it the right thing for us to do? Put up a $10 million project in our downtown to enhance our economic development downtown, and I saw this as a perfect opportunity to do that. I took it as, by the way, they just threw in $20,000 that maybe they might give us down the road. I never even considered it. It's not something that was in my thought process when I was thinking about what we were doing here.
Alderman Honquist.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will take full and complete responsibility because as chairman, I made the call to not include this in the report for the same reasons we're all discussing this, which is we decided not to make this contingent, as Alderman Mulliner said, to this project. So if I put it in there, I call out a $20,000 gift that would then at that point be moved as part of this project to be paid to the city and then off to the commission, as the city attorney said. So it was through our discussion, the decision was made to leave it separate, as has been discussed. If they make the gift, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine. As my colleagues have pointed out, it's an excellent project and a project we fully support. It's a small area. They're giving them that we're granting them some right to. And to the other points I made before, they've stepped up in several areas to make this a good project and, to be a good partner to the city. Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments? Alderman Dunn.
Just a few questions on where we are in the process with this project. I think it's the first time that this parcel's been brought before the committee, the council, at least with this project in mind. This is a request for an encroachment into a right-of-way. Are we in discussions as this development progresses with any other variances in terms of setbacks, heights? That's my first question. Also, at what stage would we review the development plan to compare that against the guidance we have in our downtown plan for architectural elements that we'd want to see in a prominent project like this, which is right next to the train station? And thirdly, do we envision any TIF incentive requests on this particular project as it progresses? So a couple questions. First little topic we're talking about is the encroachment, but what else is there, and is this project consistent with our guidelines?
I'll ask the committee, but I'll ask the city manager first. Is their proposal to build by right? With the
Yes, it is.
exception? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Alderman Mulliner?
That was going to be my comment. Their proposal is to build by right. The only thing that they're asking for is this exception.
So with the
for
exception of this encroachment, they're
That's
building
it.
within our zoning and building
So
codes.
we should not see this again until the building is actually up. The building department would handle all the rest of the construction.
We shouldn't see it.
We
The city of
shouldn't see it.
Elmhurst will
Right.
follow it through the normal
Right.
permitting
They'll-
process.
It will go through the process through the building department, but this is by right.
And no TIF request?
No TIF request.
Alderman Dunn, I think that answers your questions? Okay. Anyone else who has not spoken on the topic yet? Okay. Alderman Braham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few comments, and I think we've had good discussion in regards to should the donation be part of consideration or not. The attorney, in my interpretation of the attorney's opinion, is that it may or may not, depending on what the council perceives to do. I heard from the committee that the committee had no intent, and therefore it's not in the report, to have this donation, or I don't know what words were used, considered as part of this application. As I said in my initial comments, I'm not saying that there was any ill intent. It definitely clouds the water, muddies the water for me, though. There were two letters initiated by the petitioner's attorney, one in June, and then a second one in late August, after a meeting with city staff. The second letter is when they mentioned the donation. The first letter, there was no mention of a donation or the Arts Commission or anything along those lines, but the second one, it does bring that to the forefront. I'm glad to see it wasn't in the report. I do have concerns with the report because the committee has stated here tonight during this discussion that the petitioner is going to replace all the sidewalk that is torn up, is going to put some landscaping, et cetera, but none of that is documented in the report, and that doesn't hold the petitioner liable, just like it doesn't hold the petitioner liable for this $20,000 proposed contribution. So it doesn't hold them liable. And I know there's been discussions on this in the past where, oh, it'll just show up in the ordinance. The report's intent is to hit the major points of any recommendation, and it is lacking those 2 points. So if that is the intent of the recommendation, I would ask that that be amended to reflect that. I think the whole discussion of having a contribution mentioned in a letter of any time a request is made by any petitioner is unprecedented. to even think about putting it as consideration, and I'm not saying that the committee did, because they publicly stated that they did not, but to even think about making it consideration, I think is ill-advised and does cause a bad perception, especially in the public eye, no matter what the intent was. In this case, to me, it doesn't matter if the property's been vacant for 20 years, 100 years, or 2 months. We should be evaluating the petitioner's request on the petitioner's request, not what is gonna go there, not how long the property's been vacant. Is the request appropriate? It's been mentioned tonight about this encroachment as stated in the report, that this would allow the developer to develop the property to their specifications in the most efficient manner. That's great, but I'm not here to help the developer. I am here to help development, but not at the cost of public assets. The petitioner in this case, once again, made mention of a $20,000 contribution. If we really want to see something, if we wanted to make something as part of consideration to any type of commission, then we should be charging for that asset and then deciding at a different time as a council where those funds go. Does it fund a new commission? Does it build our streets? Whatever. You don't muddy the waters and pull both of them together. Again, there was 2 letters here. The second letter mentioned the $20,000 contribution. I applaud the developer to want to build in Elmhurst. I applaud the developer to want to contribute and be part of the community and not just build and leave. Both of these things are great, and I love to see that, and I hope all future developments consider that. I just have a lot of concern in regards to this manner, that this was mentioned in the letter, that was mentioned in the second letter, and I don't, on the merits of the request itself, I believe someone made mention of how this isn't a right-of-way vacation because the petitioner's not owning it. Well, yeah, that's true. We're giving them the use of the land without charging them for it. So, of course, they're not owning it. What we should do, in my opinion, is charge them for it and let them use it. It was made mention, well, this is below grade. It's not going to impact the city. It may or may not. Nobody here has a crystal ball. We have no idea if the city might need to use it for utilities or anything else. Once that footing is in the ground, it's in the ground, and the city cannot use it, period. So I cannot support this.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, there are a couple different things that I'm thinking about this report. One, I think, you know, it was clear from the developers, one of the developers' earlier letters, and I think it was said earlier in this discussion, the developer could build the exact same building, and they would, the cost would just be higher. They would have to use a different method to get their footings in, and the cost would increase. So there, excuse me. There is savings to the developer by us approving this request, this license agreement. So in my opinion, some compensation is appropriate. It would be my preference that it's documented in the report so that it is something that has teeth, that we will be sure that what we are giving is compensated in return. I don't think, you know, I mentioned the downtown plan that says that one way that you could support the arts is by leveraging new development. I would love to see a policy in place that mandates that if the city gives something up to support new development, the compensation we receive in return goes into the public arts. That's something I would like to see. I think it's kind of mentioned, or the suggestion of that is in our downtown plan. We don't have that policy, but you know, we certainly should debate whether or not a policy like that should be in place. But I think the absence of a policy doesn't mean this should go without compensation and that we can't, that we should take advantage of this opportunity. I think part of my thinking around this, you know, I know that we are not the city of Chicago. No one likes comparisons to the city of Chicago, but I use that only an example where the city of Chicago, if someone comes to the city and asks for zoning relief or asks for financial compensation, if it's a residential development, they have a requirement to provide some affordable housing, either within the development itself or by paying into a fund. that's something that the city of Chicago has done to help support one of their priorities. It's, you know, was very much debated, no one, but it exists, and it's not something that is challenged. So, you know, again, we can debate a policy, but I think to leverage some of our development to support something that's good for our downtown is a very thoughtful and kind of progressive way to make sure that development that's happening in our city doesn't, has some benefit for the entire community. So I will make a motion to amend this report to add language that documents the $20,000 for the Public Arts Commission as compensation. I don't have the exact language, but I hope that intent is clear.
Should I call it compensation or consideration?
I'd call it consideration.
Consideration, fine.
Which makes it part of, which, if it's part of the report, then it's part of, obviously, the follow-up resolution or ordinance or whatever we create. I just want to get this straight, Alderman Deuter. Motion to add language that says a $20,000 gift, they call it gift contribution.
Consideration.
Contribution? Encroachment is only, a gift of $20,000 is, what?
I would say that, that included there, that the $20,000 would be part of the consideration. $20,000 would be the consideration.
Part, I like part, because
Part of the
the
consideration.
committee
for-
already said their part of the consideration was these guys are building a
For
building.
the granting of the license, something like that.
In addition, $20,000 will be part of the consideration. It's as succinct as I'm going to get, unless someone wants to write it differently. In addition, $20,000 will be part of the consideration. All right.
Mayor,
so-
can I just clarify, does it say $20,000 to the Public Arts Commission or just $20,000?
No, it's,
To the Arts Commission.
where do we want it to go? I'm kidding. Public Arts Commission, in addition, $20,000 gift will be part of $20,000 gift contribution to the Arts Commission will be part of the consideration. So I have a motion before us to add to the report, in addition, a $20,000 gift to the Arts Commission will be part of the consideration. Does that accurately reflect your motion, Alderman Deuter?
Yes. thank you.
Okay. Do I have a second? I see no second. Motion fails for lack of a second. On to the original motion before us, which is discussion and approval of the report as it reads. Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of the report as written. I see a significant net benefit, as the committee said. Obviously, it's a multi-million-dollar development. We will have full use of the sidewalk going forward, so there really is no net difference to what the city or its residents will be able to enjoy. As I look at this, you know, if we want to say anything, the petitioner is guilty of poor timing, if nothing else. They gave this information at a time when this was being considered, and it's kind of A plus B equals C. It almost makes it seem like, well, aha, the committee has to be considering this because they're being told that there's this consideration out there, and it's, you know, I don't think it's real. And the idea of putting a price on things like this is basically putting government up for sale. You know, I think it's wholly foolish to think that we would say, well, we're gonna allow you to do a variance, but we're not gonna allow it unless you're gonna give us something to a commission, to this, to that. They're two separate things. If people wanna make a donation, that's separate, that's in its own place, but this, in and of itself, is gonna be a net value that's going to have a significant benefit to the entire city and is not gonna have a negative to the downtown area or to anything that's around it. Thank you.
Alderman Levin.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the record is clear, and I think it may be now, is that it's a gift. And that's what the committee said. The motion to make it not a gift didn't go anywhere. So whether or not we should have charged something for the license for the right-of-way we're giving up is a whole different topic, and the committee didn't say there's a fee for that. I don't, as the mayor said, I don't put any bad motives for someone saying, we're gonna make a gift to, I mean, the letter, the preface says there's a lot of programs that better enrich the lives of the city and its residents, and we would like to make a contribution. So I want the record to be clear. I do think that it's a good project. There's no TIF money going out. They're building to right. This is our contribution. The chances of a harm to the city for giving this up is remote. I have no doubt, I would be surprised if after someone comes before the council and says, we don't want this relief, and, oh, we're gonna make a gift, if after all that they don't give the gift. I mean, what kind of world would this be? So, I mean, I would say the mayor will make the gift if the developer doesn't do it, but, so I support this. Second, yeah.
Motion fails. Sorry, go ahead, Alderman Levin. You said you supported it. I want to make sure I didn't cut you off.
No, I support it for the reasons that it's a good project for downtown, separate from the gift.
Okay. Any additional comments? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this report as it stands because I do think there's value in this development going in. We have had a lot of opportunities to support other projects within the TIF, and I do think that this is a way that we can encourage development and that property that has been vacant for a long time. That said, I appreciate the motion. I think it would be, an added value for someone to contribute to the Arts Commission. And I actually do think it's something for us to consider in the future, that it's appropriate and I would think beneficial if a developer wants a variance or wants to deviate in some way from our code, that the developer could earn some credits or offset some of that variance by contributing something that would enhance the downtown plan. So, going forward, if this is written into the report that says, there's added value in our project and here's what it is, and that's why it's a value for the public good, I would definitely support that. I do think this project is good on its own, and I would think, I would agree with Alderman Levin that this public debate would really enhance the pressure now on this developer to contribute. So I will support the report.
Okay. Alderman Braham.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment. Two aldermen has spoken about, a contribution or in the future doing something, and there was a motion doing something for the Arts Commission. I mean, I think that's a slippery slope, because I personally would like to then say, if we give something to a developer, part of a right-of-way or something along those lines, I would like to see stormwater added to the development. Not stormwater, but stormwater, retention, detention. So I think that's just a slippery slope, and that's why I think that there should be two different policy discussions. It shouldn't be part of any type of petition, and which the recommendation was not. It did not include it in there. But it shouldn't be a policy decision that we think about in the future. It should be, those monies go into a general fund, and then we talk about how we want to spend those dollars at a later time. I agree. Well, I'll say in regards to the city being up for sale, I don't think it's up for sale because we're not asking for anything here. We're giving it away for free. So I don't think it's up for sale. Just because we charge for an asset, I don't think that means that it's up for sale. It's just cost for the asset that we're not allowed to use in the future in its full extent. So I think there was a lot of good discussion here tonight. I can't support this. I don't understand why we wouldn't charge for a city asset that the taxpayers own today and have always owned.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Honquist.
I just want to make the comment for those that understand that development does bring money in through tax revenue to the city, so we're not giving anything away. Number two, my phone number is 847-951-5554. If you have questions about what we're doing, whether they're ethical, not ethical, you want to have understanding of what was discussed in the committee, you can call me and I can explain it to you. It might help with some of the frustration that has been exhibited from both the public and some of my colleagues, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Clerk Cyprian.
Palumski?
Aye.
Graham?
Nope.
Saludo?
Aye.
York?
Aye.
Levin?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Conquest?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Sabatino, absent. Deuter?
Aye.
Dunn?
Aye.
Leader?
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 6.14 is approved. On to agenda item 6.20. This is a resolution. Clerk Cyprian, I'd ask that you read the resolution.
A resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a consulting agreement between Ken Bartels and the City of Elmhurst.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Palumski.
Safety issue.
Alderman Levin, I think this,
No, it came out.
well, see,
Actually,
there you go
it was-
over there.
My mistake, sorry.
That's okay. You
I'll defer to
followed,
the chairman.
I followed your lead.
You're welcome to take the lead if you'd like.
No, I'll defer to the committee. Is there any gift in here is all I want to know.
Alderman Levin is deferring to the committee that generated the report that resulted in this resolution.
And the committee chair is deferring to the alderman that pulled it for
Got it.
comments.
Ping pong, Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't belabor this. I spoke about it 2 weeks ago when the report was before us. I provided data that was provided to me from city staff that showed, at least in my perception, that there is redundancy in the utilization of this consultant's role between communication as well as economic development, since we have full-time staff, 1 full-time staff for communication and 2 for economic development. And I guess that's all that needs to be said from my end.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Levin, you sure?
Yes, I think I.
Clerk Cyprian.
Palumski?
Aye.
Graham?
No?
Saludo?
Aye.
York?
Aye.
Levin?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Conquest?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Sabatino, absent. Deuter?
Aye.
Dunn?
Aye, excuse me.
Leader?
Aye.
12 ayes, 1 nay, 1 absent.
12 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 6.20 is approved. On to agenda item 7, reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. 7.1, Mayor Morley, that is me. 2 quick announcements. Fire Department Open House on October 14th. Join the Elmhurst Fire Department on Sunday, October 14th, from 12 to 4 at Fire Station 2 as they celebrate National Fire Prevention Week. Also, has been mentioned at the last couple of meetings, the draft sub-area plan public hearing is to be held tomorrow. Tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, October 2nd. Elmhurst Zoning and Planning Commission will hold a public hearing to consider the city's draft sub-area plans tomorrow, October 2nd, right here at City Hall at 7 p.m. That's it for me. City Manager?
Thank you. 2 items. One, the downtown construction continues to progress on schedule. I'm pleased to report. Even more pleased to report that the Myrtle Avenue crossing is open again after that rail work is done.
Okay. Any other reports from the dais?
Question for the city manager, if I may.
Sure.
I've had some inquiries about the downtown construction. Is there a schedule of when that is expected to be complete on York Avenue?
Yes, I believe November 15th is the absolute drop-dead date for the contractor. Obviously, we're working with them to move that along as quickly as possible, though. But November 15th would be the issue date.
Okay. Any other reports? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There seems to have been, in recent weeks, a lot of activity when it comes to O'Hare and Fly Quiet. From my understanding, what is being discussed or proposed is the current proposed IFQ, which is the interim Fly Quiet rotation, is being proposed to be modified. I personally don't understand how that would be, because my understanding the environmental study is ongoing, and if you're changing the IFQ in the middle, I would think you would have to start over from the environmental study perspective, or the EIS. But what has been discussed, and I don't believe that anything has been approved, but what has been discussed is removing out of the 8 rotations, removing 2 of them. So it would go from an 8-week rotation plan to a 6-week rotation plan. The 2 rotations, coincidentally or not, that they plan or they're discussing to remove is rotation weeks 1 and 5, which are the east-west parallel runway rotations. So that would mean that the air traffic would go on the diagonal runways, which impacts the city of Elmhurst significantly. With that said, it only gets better, said sarcastically, that would mean that there would be consecutive city of Elmhurst impacts, because the diagonal runways would be utilized 2 weeks in a row, if not more. I believe it's either 2 or 3 weeks at most, which the ONCC committee, I believe it was the ONCC full committee, has stated. I know the ad hoc Fly Quiet Committee has stated on numerous occasions that consecutive community impacts is not allowed and should not happen. Well, if this proposal goes through, then that's exactly what they're doing, but they're not doing it to the city of Chicago, neighborhoods, or any of the east-west communities. They're doing it to the handful of communities that are impacted by the 4R22L or 422 runways. Which would be significant impact, like I've already stated, to the city of Elmhurst. With that, that is just my understanding of what has gone on. They've also talked about the potential elimination, I believe, of the traditional Fly Quiet program. I already talked about the IFQ, or the interim, and that they're starting to talk about the future Fly Quiet program as well, and what that would look like. I would ask if our representative, Alderman Dunn, or you, Mr. Mayor, or the city manager has anything to add to my report. But this is my understanding of reviewing the last few meetings that have occurred over the last couple of weeks.
I have nothing to add to your report. Alderman Dunn?
What I can shed light on is that there is a permanent Fly Quiet Committee, and our next meeting is on October 18th. And we continue to review options for a permanent Fly Quiet rotation. The IFQ, the interim Fly Quiet, that is proposed to commence after the environmental study is completed. The last date I heard was next April. We got an update from the last technical committee meeting of the ONCC that there's some construction that will take place on the 4L 22R runway, which is the one that impacts us, that would take that out of the rotation for more than half of the IFQ. That is a benefit to us because it would not be used at all for most of the IFQ period. In fact, it would only be used for 11 months is the current estimation right now. As far as changing the rotation, there's nothing that I can comment on. I believe we'll probably talk about that at our meeting on October 18th at the Fly Quiet Committee.
Okay, any other reports? All right. Any other business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Wallner, second by Alderman Toledo. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.